Welcome to Navigating Cancer. I'm Wendy Hall from the Robert Boisnot Oncology Institute, and we are so glad that you're joining us today. We have a wonderful local celebrity here. Joining us is Dr. Nancy Irven, and I came across Dr. Nancy several times over the years, but most recently at the Crystal River Rotary, where you were speaking about this book, but not about the book as much as all the great nutritional ideas. And since you know we're a cancer institute, we are very much concerned about lifestyle and prevention of cancer and nutrition and all the other things as well. So I said, wow, we need to have her on our show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about you and just the background on you, maybe before you get into the book.
Okay. Well, I've been practicing in the Citrus County for 20 years, and I earned my diplomate in anti-aging in 2000, and the reason why I decided to do that was because I would see chiropractic patients coming in that had so many nutritional deficiencies that can cause musculoskeletal problems, and they can lead to cancer. So at that time, back in 2000, anti-aging was really based more about how you eat, your exercise level. It wasn't so much the whole cosmetic industry. So in doing this, I began to realize that we need to start young. So I worked with the Crystal River High School Health Department, not Health Department, excuse me, Health Academy, and started a program where we would educate the kids a little bit differently than the normal eat your fruits and vegetables, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that's really how it started. Then this went on for about 10 years, and in 2007, I had a lot of questions from parents about what I was teaching the kids at the school. So I wrote the book, Please Don't Eat the Wallpaper, so that the parents could understand what I was teaching them, because I was taking a little different approach than normal nutrition classes, and we called it no-nonsense nutrition. And so this is where the book came from. Well,
it's excellent, and I actually remember seeing you at the Crystal River Academy one time, and I remember you were doing fat density tests. I don't know if that's the right term.
Exactly, visceral body.
Visceral body.
Yes.
And the students were lined up, I think it's very good that you have a resource for the parents, because our eating habits and everything else start someplace anyway.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I actually use the Futurex 5000, which is a very sophisticated piece of equipment, and I know that Dr. Bennett also uses that in his office. We've talked about that, to measure the visceral body fat. It's much more accurate than the induction current, because if you're overweight, the induction current's going to be a little less accurate. If you're underweight, if you're old, it's going to be inaccurate. If you're young, there's so many variables that makes it inaccurate. So we were using the Futurex 5000, and the interesting thing about it was we began to discover, as we were doing these long lines of students, literally hundreds of students every year, that you have kids who look good. They look healthy. They have a very healthy BMI, or some of them have a low BMI, 16, 17, 18, which is your relationship between your height and your weight. And we were finding that so many of these kids had high levels of visceral body fat. And that is a side of obesity that is really new, because most people are looking at how much you weigh as being a definition of obesity, and really what we were seeing is that you could have a healthy weight and you could still be significantly over fat, and this has a lot of health risks.
Absolutely, besides cancer, diabetes, and heart disease.
Exactly.
And all these
autoimmune
chronic
diseases.
Yes.
Yes, really what they're finding is that this visceral body fat that we have either in our abdomen or throughout our body, depending upon where all we have it distributed, it actually begins to act like an organ of its own, and it secretes chemistry that again contributes to heart disease and cancer and autoimmune diseases and diabetes. And so this is one of the reasons why it's very important that we try to be a little bit more healthy, because this actually works against us no matter how healthy we think we are, we now are creating another organ in our body that is putting out chemistry that is causing us to have these diseases.
Wow, so this is an area that most people don't get into. I mean, you can go to so many websites and you can get your BMI real lickety-split and everything.
Right.
Oh, wow, I mean, you know, I'm right in the middle of that. That's great and everything.
Right.
And that is not all the story at all.
No, that's not all the story. But the thing about it is there is such a big story with the amount of what I call the visible obesity, that the job is so big. It's almost like people wonder why I'm even trying to take people who have good BMIs and point out their obesity. The reason why is because it comes down to malnutrition. It comes down to our quality of the food that we take in. And with the students, I learned that I wanted to get away from using the terms good and bad when it comes to food choices, because there's this moral overtone. And I really like to teach this program using the words regenerative and degenerative. People do not realize that foods can be regenerative. They can give us life, they can give us health, and these are usually your fruits and vegetables and really even meats and beans and legumes and anything that I try to help people understand. Probably if your grandmother's grandmother ate it, then that would be a regenerative food, because we're still eating it and we're still here. But over the last 50 or 60 years, we have this, what we call this industrialized food. And it comes in cellophane packages, and it comes in boxes, and it's got all kinds of, the label has all kinds of chemicals and things, and it tastes really good to most people. In fact, we've kind of developed a taste for it. But it is creating a lot of this malnutrition in us. You know, starvation and obesity are really the two different sides of the same problem, which is malnourishment.
Wow. You know what? We want you to join us because I know we're going to talk more about all of these things. And in your book, you even have a label, and you can give us some tips on reading food labels and things like that. So we are going to be right back with Dr. Nancy Irven after this break. And welcome back to Navigating Cancer. I'm Wendy Hall, the Cancer Navigator and Social Worker at Robert Boisnot Oncology Institute. And joining us today for a very legitimate topic is Dr. Nancy Irven. And we've been talking about her, information from her book, not necessarily about the book, Please Don't Eat the Wallpaper, which is really a neat title. And when you read it, you see how it all fits together. It's a super easy, wonderful book. And as I was leaving my office today, one of the ladies said to me, "Oh, I have that book." And her husband is a teacher at Crystal River High School, so I have a feeling that they came across you or whatever and got the book. Nutrition facts and information on labels. I think maybe if you could give us some easy tips that we can get in our brain, and that would be helpful to us.
Sure. First of all, I want to say that in most nutrition classes, and most of the patients that I talk to, and even most of the students that I have worked with, we are taught to look at the grams of fat. We are taught to look at how many carbohydrates. We're taught to look at how much salt. These are some of the things that people really zero in on. What I wanted people to understand, especially the kids, is that we want to know what food is actually providing the salt, the carbohydrates, and the fat. And so the most important part of the label is to look at is right down at the very bottom where it says ingredients, and on page 47 it does have this. And in this particular product, the first ingredient is enriched flour. This is one of the ingredients that we really try to show people how limited the nutritional value is.
Right. And I notice you don't say don't ever have anything, but you're trying to show us how to limit it so that we can be the most healthy.
Yes, the bottom line is I try to teach people that our staples, the staples are the things we eat every day. Whatever our breakfast is, whatever our lunch is, whatever our breads are, whatever these staples are that we have in our diet, we need those, we need to move them up a level. And sometimes we can move them up many levels before we're really eating, you know, good, nutritious, regenerative food. But the staples are the important foods that we not have full of the enriched flour. The other ingredient in here is the partially hydrogenated fat. That is a trans fat. When people are looking for trans fats, they may look up in the label where it says 0 trans fats, but if you look down in the wording and it says partially hydrogenated fat, then you realize there is still trans fat in there. By law, the label can say 0 if it's less than half a gram per serving. Which means some of these, you know, different bags of chips and things like that will say 0 trans fats, but there's 9 servings in there. So the serving has been made really small so that they can actually advertise 0 trans fats.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yes, so, you know, instead of the big advertising part where it says 0 trans fats, if you'll go to that ingredient label and see partially hydrogenated, then you know there's trans fats in there. Also, another thing I taught the kids to look for is high fructose corn syrup, because we really began replacing sugar, which is deficient in nutrients anyway, as itself, with something that's even worse, which is high fructose corn syrup, because it's cheaper and it's more plentiful.
So you're saying high fructose corn syrup?
Yes,
okay,
exactly. These 3 ingredients I taught them to look for because most products that are packaged are going to have a lot of chemicals. But if you're looking for those 3 ingredients and you say, well, I'm not going to have this as a staple in my diet if it has these ingredients, then you're going to automatically rule out hundreds of chemicals. And so it makes it easier rather than giving a list of hundreds of chemicals for people to stay away from, or at least minimize and not have in their staples.
Wow, that's really good. So the staples are the things that we want to regenerate.
Yes.
And we want to minimize the, what's the other word?
The degenerative.
The degenerative.
Yes.
And what we were looking at was actually 16 crackers, which isn't hard to eat, 16 crackers if you're sitting there. And,
right, exactly.
So very, very good. What other things in the book have been, you've gotten a lot of response from?
Yes, I have. Well, one of the things that I would like to share, and this happened in the early years after I would teach the kids when they were freshmen. And then before they would graduate as seniors, we would do a follow-up interview. And there is one young lady here that I want, you know, there were so many, but I had to pick out some. And what happened is, she was about a 16 BMI when we first started, which is a
low,
very
right?
thin, yeah. Anyway, she was about a 16 BMI, and she was about 28% visceral body fat when we first started with it. And 28% body fat for her age was very good. That's healthy BMI. Then 3 years later, when we looked at her diet diary, and she was eating crackers and candies, and you know, the diet diaries of these kids was what really surprised me. And so 3 years later, she said, you know, she really didn't make any changes in her food. She didn't have any changes in her exercise. She had gained about 9 pounds. Now she was about a BMI of 18, but she was now 35% visceral body fat. So visually, she hadn't changed that much. She was still very thin, but in these 3 years of high school, she had become obese. And it was not even visually apparent, and you could tell by what was in her diet diary. And you know, things like this are in the book where I'm just sharing. We don't realize when we want that snack, we don't realize that the snack is okay, but if that snack is our breakfast, if it's our lunch, if it's our dinner on a regular basis, as the years go by, the fact that we're not getting quality calories in the food that we're consuming, even just in 3 years and a high school student, it was amazing how obvious it was that this poor young lady was really headed in a very dangerous direction.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So this is, you know, everybody kind of likes the whole please don't eat the wallpaper because you know, it's funny. And I tell a story in the beginning about watching my mother hang wallpaper when I was a small child, and she took the flour and mixed it with water, and that was the paste.
Yeah.
What I want people to understand is that it's when we do these things every single day, every single meal, day after day, year after year, the accumulation is something that is very, difficult to undo. We only have one chance to age. And if we start young and get the kids to respect food, what I was really finding is that the kids had no respect for real food. They didn't understand that the nutrients in an apple were actually better than this food bar that said 100% RDA,
right.
and that it would offer you everything you could possibly need. They didn't realize until they looked at the label that these calories were coming from refined grain, which has so little nutrients, and the trans fats, which have no nutrients, and the high fructose corn syrup, which has no nutrients.
Well, we are going to come right back and we're going to talk about more. And again, please don't eat the wallpaper, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Navigating Cancer, and joining us today is Dr. Nancy Irven. And why don't you tell again, in case people tuned in late, where your office is and what your background is?
Yes, my office is at 9030 West Fort Island Trail in Crystal River. I've been a chiropractor in the area for 20 years, and I received my diplomate in anti-aging in 2000, so I combined both of them in my practice. And I've been volunteering over the Crystal River Health Academy since 2000 to try to help these kids realize that good food, real food, is so much better for us.
It's regenerative.
It's regenerative, yes. I give them an example of regenerative versus degenerative. I say, if you take a wilting plant and you put gasoline on it, it will probably die very quickly. You take a wilting plant, you put water on it, a few hours later, it just perks up. This is regenerative versus degenerative.
Cool, yes.
So as long as we get that in our mind, and the kids, what I really like is that the kids do care about their bodies. So one of the little games we would play when I would go over there is we'd take a sheet of paper, and it had many different categories, and vegetables, fruits, meats, eggs, dairy, beans, whole grains, herbs, condiments, nuts, sweeteners, and beverages. Different column for each one. And each one of them would have a piece of paper, and they would start out by saying, well, I don't like vegetables. Well, you start with vegetables, and you have them raise their hand. Okay, just, everybody raise your hand and just list one vegetable you like. And if you hear somebody else mention something that you like, write it down. This is kind of your grocery list to take home. So it would get really exciting because all the hands would go up and all these vegetables were being mentioned.
Wow, all these things are so positive.
Exactly. And I remember there was a girl, one of the young ladies was giggling in the back, and I said, okay, what is so funny? She goes, I can't believe I like 15 vegetables, and I didn't even know it. And really, this is what happened when I did this for myself. There were things like black-eyed peas. When was the last time I ate them? But I love them. Because we get into this blinder with food, and we're only going to eat the same thing over and over.
That's true.
So it was exciting because they discovered there were many vegetables they liked, there were many fruits that they liked, there were many different meats, many different cheeses, many different beans. All these foods they actually know that they like, but for some reason we're not eating these foods. So this was their grocery list, and I told them to take this home, show it to their parents, go to the grocery store with them, and it was really exciting because so many of them did. So many of them, the teacher, Ms. Powell, would tell me that after I would come and speak, they would be bringing in apples for lunch, they would be bringing in bananas, they would be eating different foods. Some of them were brown bagging it now. And that's what's exciting, is to get kids to realize the power of food. When they looked at me and in the early years and said, you mean Cheerios are not as healthy as an egg? Then something has gone wrong in the way that our kids understand food.
Definitely, and our culture is something else. We really miss the mark altogether.
Yes, and a lot of it is just the advertising. I would teach them that if it's heavily advertised, it's probably something that you don't want as a staple.
That's true.
When was the last time you saw apples advertised on TV? When was the last time you saw, eggs advertised? So be careful about those heavily advertised. We'll provide all of your recommended daily allowance of nutrients, and yet it's a chocolate crispy cereal. Okay, is this really something we want to start the day with? So,
I know you said earlier, you gave an example about one of the students, but if they're getting this information at that age, and then they're going to remember it sometime along the line. Some of them maybe got in the habit of doing everything regenerative as you taught them, but for those that didn't, that doesn't mean it's not going to come when they mature and
exactly.
when they're, at a different time and place. Because I think many people, even my age, really don't have any clue about nutrition.
Well, yes.
Over the years, we just haven't done a good job.
It is. I've been reviewing thousands of diet diaries from adults and children for the last 12 years. It really is disappointing that our society has gone in this direction so completely. And what is so exciting is the kids that really got this. And I'd like to tell just two quick stories.
Sure.
One of them, when we went over all this regenerative and degenerative, trying to teach the kids basically look for these 3 chemicals. If they're there, don't do that as a staple. Come over here and all these fruits and vegetables, etc., that you like. One girl went home. She opened up the pantry. She sat down 2 chairs in front of the pantry, and she said, "Here, Mom and Dad, I want you to sit down, and I want you to see what I learned in school today." Cool. Now, this was a 45-minute class, and she really comprehended the whole thing. She went through all the labels in the pantry and showed her parents why these were not foods that they should be eating on a regular basis. They shouldn't be their staples. That was so exciting. And then another one was a young lady who basically had been having a lot of health problems, and she just went home and showed her mother, "This is my grocery list. These are the foods I like." And if we want kids to eat healthy, we have to start with the foods they like. Yeah. We can't ask them to eat spinach if they don't like spinach.
Right.
If they would eat broccoli. Okay, or if they would eat okra, or if they would eat some of these different foods. It's amazing what these kids like, and nobody's fixing it for them, and nobody's buying it for them.
That's true, and I think, we're lazy at home, in general, and we don't buy the different things in the grocery store that we need to do, where we have to prepare something. So.
Right. And that's another thing. There was one day that I would come and I would bring food for all the kids so that they could taste it. But I would like to see some type of food preparation. I don't like to call them cooking classes, because you can fix a nice meal and not even turn on a stove and have to heat up a saucepan. And this is what they don't understand, how simple eating an avocado, a banana, an apple, some cheese. This is regenerative food. This is giving us life. This is giving us nutrients. And then I had a poster where I would show them, for instance, a carrot and all of the 200 ingredients that were in that carrot.
Carrots are good, and I think they taste good too.
Yes.
I don't know anybody that doesn't like a carrot.
I don't either. But it's amazing how carrots were not on so many of the diet diaries. They like them, but they're not eating them. So it was just an idea of if we teach them, what will they do with it? And I was amazed how many changes that so many of them would make in a very, very positive way.
Well, I can say this is an excellent book for anybody of any age that's interested in thinking about regenerative. And we live in a community where we have these wonderful people that are aging, and some with chronic illnesses and things, but it's never too late.
No.
I'm for sure never too late to start thinking in terms of what we should be eating to regenerate our body. So thank you so much for being on the show and all the great work that you do, and people can come and meet up with you, I'm sure, in Crystal River. So we want to thank you for joining us on Navigating Cancer, and we'll be back again next week.